with me, Robert,
And me, Joey Lafko.
and we're gonna start with some breaking news. So actually, just about an hour ago, Russell Wilson was released
Wow.
from the Broncos.
Yeah.
What are the initial takes there, Joe?
Crazy move. Honestly, I'm very surprised that Russell Wilson was released by the Broncos. I mean, we had Sean Payton go in there in 2022, try to clean everything up. Or no, sorry, this past year, 2023.
Right.
And that's Russell Wilson was brought in 2022. And I just want to compare some stats right now as to wrap your head around why they would release him after just such a bounce back. In 2022, Russell Wilson had a 60% completion rate, threw for 3,500 yards, threw 16 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Pretty bad. That's not top tier quarterback money, especially what he's getting paid. And in 2023, just this past year, he upped his completion percentage from 60 to 66. Threw for 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Promising, especially with Peyton coming in there. You could see his impact on what he did statistically, but I'm just shocked as to why they would give him so much money and just release him now. Do you think the owners have more obviously the owners have more trust now in Sean Payton than they ever did in Russell Wilson, but how do you feel about that?
It's just weird because I think these days teams just move on so quickly from things because they're so desperate to perform. Because I think the thing about the NFL is that fan bases can quickly, dissipate when a team is not doing well. And the Broncos really haven't done that well in the past few years. But I think when Russell moved there and then Sean Payton was hired, there was a lot of excitement. And I mean, did they have a great year? Obviously not. But, considering where they started and where they ended, they obviously started, I think, 1-7, 1-6. I mean,
Yeah.
I think their 8th game was a 70-21 loss to the Dolphins. I mean, so the fact that they recovered, I mean, what was their final record?
I mean, yeah, so we're looking right here. Their final record was 8-9, which is not terrible, obviously, but you have to give time for the team to develop.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
can't have 2 bad seasons with a quarterback you just paid $200 million plus.
Yeah, they paid him so much money.
And be all right, you're out after 1-2 years. At least give them 3 years.
Right. And I think the thing about Russ is that with Seattle, he had such great early success. And then as Pete Carroll kind of started heading out the door, that's when things went downhill. And then obviously Russ left before Carroll. But regardless, I think, when Wilson moved to Denver, I think he just needed some time. And I mean, the front office clearly, I mean, they already got rid of him. So I think that's interesting. And I guess we have to consider what's next for him, right? So
yeah, I mean,
what teams are we thinking are looking for a quarterback like him right now?
Well, I mean, one team that comes to mind automatically is the Falcons. I mean, we have the Falcons. Who they have a quarterback? Ritter, Desmond Ritter. Who is that? He's a 3rd-round pick in the 2022 draft. I mean, they definitely need a new quarterback in there, especially after hiring their new coach, Raheem Morris. And I just wanted to point this out about the Broncos. Their beginning of the season, right? They started off, as you said, a really bad record. They lost to the Raiders, Commanders, Dolphins. Then they won to the Bears. So we're looking at 1-3 in the first 4 weeks. Then lost to the Jets, so 1-4. Lost to the Chiefs, 1-5. So they started off the season 1-5 after they finally got their second win against the Packers. So 2-5. But then, as you can see, they go on a winning streak after the Packers. They go win at Chiefs. That's 3-5. Broncos, they beat the Bills. They beat the Bills. So that's 4-5. And they beat the Vikings 5-5. They beat us, the Browns, 6-5. They go on this winning streak, and so you're thinking, what's going on? What changed? But more importantly, what I think is it's proven to have success with these really good teams: Browns, Bills, Vikings, Chiefs. Why do you let him go? You had some success there. That means that you can work through your problems if you are mature adults in the building.
Yeah, I think so. And also, you have to consider defense, too.
Yeah.
It's not just an offensive issue. And other news, Jason Kelce announced his retirement earlier today. What was an emotional press conference. I mean, I think we all expected it, right? I I feel like he announced it already, but it wasn't official until this press conference, right?
Yeah.
So at least that was just kind of
I
the
think there was
sentiment.
a rumor. Was it? It was
Maybe
like
it was
it was someone who leaked it. I feel like.
maybe a more solid rumor,
Yeah.
I guess. But I guess it's not all that surprising. And obviously, I mean, Kelsey's been a phenomenal center for the Eagles for a long time, and um, there were those clips of him with his shirt off in Buffalo.
I mean,
cheering
man,
on his brother,
he's enjoying life. I feel like he's at that stage where he wants to. He can. I'm sure he has a little more football in him, but I'm sure he wants to also enjoy his life, like be able to do that on the sideline, like have his shirt off, cheer on his brother, like just not a worry in the world. I mean, I'm sure he'll probably move to the analyst side eventually, but like
I feel like
just
he'd
living
fit.
life
Yeah,
now.
I
Yeah,
feel like he'd fit right into that role.
yeah,
He seems
I
like
do too.
the guy who could be a good analyst. But we were talking earlier about where Russell Wilson could potentially go, and so we're going to kind of flip topics to best and worst coaching hire so far this offseason. So obviously, as you mentioned, Raheem Morris from the Rams defensive coordinator's position to the Falcons head coach position. I didn't know this, but he spent 6 years in Atlanta from 2015 to 2020.
Morris did.
Yeah,
Wow.
as assistant head coach and then defensive coordinator. But I think that the headline for Morris is the fact that he led that Rams defense that won them the Super Bowl, right? I mean,
Yeah,
right?
that amazing Rams defense,
Yeah,
like oh my
incredible
god,
against a Bengals offense that really it seemed like they couldn't be stopped at one point. So I think like what does that mean? Going to a team like Atlanta when there's a coach that has the more defensive mindset.
Well, I mean, Atlanta has a lot of defensive key players right now that they need to take advantage of. I mean, I think that Atlanta had a good defense on paper, roster wise, and Raheem Morris is going to be able to go in there and transform their roster to make them kind of like what Jim Schwartz did with the Browns. I feel like Jim Schwartz with the Browns. I mean, he obviously changed their defense from like bottom 20 to top 1, but I think Raheem Morris to the Falcons will be very beneficial for their defense. I mean, like you saw what he did in LA. You saw how he shut down the Bengals. I mean, in that Super Bowl. So I think he can definitely develop those key players in Atlanta to be able to develop into a good defense.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I think when we're looking at the question of whether it's the best hire, I mean, you can't argue against Jim Harbaugh, right?
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
because first of all, obviously he had an extremely great career at Michigan, kind of capping it off with the national championship last season, and then obviously, he's known for having a great defense, and I think I mean I don't even know how good the Chargers defense is, but I think that's an aspect where they need to improve. So I think that's good, and obviously on paper, like he's the best hire because he had that 4-year stint with the 49ers where he led them to 3 NFC championships, Super Bowl appearance. And I didn't know this, but that Super Bowl, it was, I believe, Super Bowl, I can't remember. I think it was, I don't know, 50 something. And
one of the 50s.
One of the 50s. And he played against his brother in the Ravens, and they lost 34-31. I for some reason, that Super Bowl just like went, I like just forgot about it. I don't know why. Like now that I'm looking at it, it's like, wow, that was such a good game.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just didn't think of it, but that was the only matchup between the brothers in the NFL ever. So I found that really interesting. But
two brothers that were coaches, right?
Yeah, head coaches. So, and I think the other thing is that a lot of the time when you get a coach that goes from college to the NFL. Like if you take Nick Saban, for example, take Matt Rule, for example, Urban Meyer, for example, those did not turn out very well, right? Nick Saban had some of his worst coaching careers with the Dolphins. Matt Rule was absolutely horrible with the Panthers. Urban Meyer again, yeah. Urban Meyer with Jacksonville, not great, right? So I think that's one concern, but I think Harbaugh is different because he has the NFL coaching experience already.
100%. I mean, that's the biggest difference between Harbaugh and these other college coaches that went to the NFL. He already has the experience. He went to the Super Bowl. He knows what he's doing. He will be able to go in that Chargers locker room, change it around, get Justin Herbert to be more comfortable in the field. I mean, he already is pretty comfortable, but like getting him those plays that he needs to be able to be as great as he can be, get the ball to his playmakers, I think we're gonna have a great year with the Chargers,
Yeah,
especially with Jim Harbaugh being coach.
I agree. Another really good hire is Brian Callahan for the Titans, I think. Just because I think with the way the Titans are heading right now, they're basically betting on Will Levis, right? Because Tannehill, just based on the few games that I watched of him, I mean, I think his time is kind of running out, right?
Yeah.
So I think with the way that Callahan has worked with quarterbacks in the past, obviously with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. I mean, Burrow's been excellent. So I think that it's a great hire for the Titans because he can work with Levis really closely, develop his game. And I think it's a solid hire. I think Harbaugh is a better hire, but I think for what the Titans need right now, I think it's a good fit.
I agree, but a hire that has a lot of attention as well is Mike Macdonald. I mean, you see the Ravens defensive coordinator going to the Seahawks, head coaching. He's going to bring a defensive mind to Seattle, be able to get his key players locked in. I mean, we have you see how he developed those players on the Ravens. I mean, Kyle Hamilton, you had Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, all these picks that he just kind of transformed because these are rookies, early players, like they're going through their first years, and he was able to really make that Ravens team dominant with their defense. Like, I mean, again, we saw that with the Ravens, we thought no one could stop them. Like, just like the other team that you mentioned earlier. I mean, the Ravens defense was so good. Like, I think Seattle will be extremely good with Mike Macdonald as head coach.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a solid hire. I think the concerns for Seattle run deeper than coaching, though. I think in terms of quarterback, is Geno Smith the answer? And obviously Drew Lock is the backup. And while I think they're both overall decent and like not awful options, I think they kind of need to search elsewhere. And the other interesting thing about Macdonald is that he actually, compared to most, I think, if not all of these other coaches that we're considering, he doesn't have any football playing experience. Now, I don't know if that makes a difference at all, but I just thought that was interesting to note because he went to University of Georgia and just undergrad. No, he was, I think he was a graduate coaching assistant, so he obviously has like coaching experience.
Yeah.
Or else he wouldn't have been hired. But I think it is interesting that he doesn't have.
I mean, I think it's pretty impressive that he has had no playing experience and was able to also just transfer that Ravens defense to what it became. And I mean, like, he has proven his capabilities being the defensive coordinator for that team. Obviously, Seattle's problems do root further. Obviously, you have the offensive side of the ball. I mean, offseason is long from being over. I think that what Seattle needs to do right now to be able to become a contender and to be able to make the most out of their hiring, obviously get that defense to be a top contender. Mike Macdonald probably will take care of that part, but they obviously, like you said, need to get a quarterback in there. I mean, I don't think Geno Smith will be the answer. I don't even think he's better than Russell Wilson. I mean, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen with Russell Wilson being released? I mean, we were talking earlier before the episode how he may even go back to Seattle. I mean, I don't know if that's a possibility, but that would be funny to see.
That would be interesting. I would honestly be I would be happy for him if he did that. I think like
get a new chance with a new system, a new coach, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously Seattle loves him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, again, it's probably not realistic to go back to your old team, but we've seen crazier things happen, so you never know. Speaking of, looking ahead to next season, let's talk about legitimate contenders for next year's Super Bowl. So obviously, you've got, your favorites. You've got Baltimore, San Francisco, Detroit.
I think the betting odds right now actually have it to the Niners being first,
okay,
Chiefs second, Ravens third, Bills fourth, and then Lions 5. I mean, do you agree with that list? Like,
the one team that is interesting is the Bills. I think, so the Bills were what, right behind the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's
or actually the Bills are right behind the Ravens. The Ravens are behind the Chiefs.
So
then
the Bills were fourth.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think that makes sense. I do think it is interesting that 3 AFC teams were in the top 4.
Isn't
but
that crazy?
Yeah, and then I mean, there's another team that's kind of lurking right behind there. As I'm looking at your computer, is Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They obviously were very under the radar this year, didn't make the postseason, but
mostly because of Burrow being
right.
out.
That we can right. But if you look to next year, obviously Callahan's now gone, so that's something to consider. But personally, I think if Burrow is healthy and if Cincinnati can manage to keep all of its talented players, like their wide receivers, and then I think the other question for them is whether or not they're going to keep Joe Mixon, because I know, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have the sixth most cap space this offseason in the league.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, so
that makes the Bengals even more dangerous, I feel
right,
like.
exactly, because they're going to be able to, I think with Mixon, for them, I think they could probably free up some more space by releasing him and finding somebody else, because I think he's good, but I think that that for Cincinnati, prioritizing keeping their talented receivers is more important. Just the way that Burrow plays and the way that team plays.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, if you were the Bengals front office, what would you do with Mixon?
I would 100% keep him. I mean, you have to have Mixon in your system. I mean, look what he's done for the team just in the past. I mean, I think Mixon is a very good running back in that system, and I think they just need to pay him. I mean, a lot of these running backs deserve to be paid as well. I mean, you see what happened with, what was it last season? The Colts running back Jonathan Taylor.
Sure.
You see how he got his contract extension and then made himself very useful for the Colts last season. I mean, I think the Bengals need to prioritize re-signing their key players that got them to that Super Bowl as well. I mean, you have T. Higgins there too, who needs to be re-signed. A lot of free agents going on the market on that roster that they just need to lock in.
I have to disagree with the Mixon take, because I just don't see him. He is important, obviously. Like, you can't deny that. Obviously, having a good running back is important for any team. But I think with the way Cincinnati plays and the way Burrow plays, again, I said earlier how Callahan's now gone. So who knows how the offense is going to shift, and maybe the new offensive coordinator is going to really want a good running back to rely on. But I think with the talents that Burrow has with his extremely good passing game, I just don't think that Mixon is that essential. I mean, again, you want to have a good running option, because not having a good running back is not something you want. But I think for Cincinnati, letting him go, I think Cincinnati fans can look past that.
Letting him go, but then who could replace Mixon in that scenario? I mean, you draft a new running back, put some development in.
You just sign someone. You sign someone for less money.
I guess. I mean,
you sign someone for less money.
Someone who'll be less good though.
Yeah, but again, that's the argument I'm making, is that the running back's just not as important as wide receivers. And if you want to keep the wide receiver room intact, then you have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think that's where we're heading with that. So let's talk about some other teams. I mean, we talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but the 49ers, if Brock Purdy is really the answer with Shanahan, and then also the Ravens. I mean, I think with the Ravens, the issue for me with them is that they've been the 1 seed and the favorite they were the 1 seed in 2019. They were the 1 seed last year, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were probably the 1 seed another year too. But they just haven't managed to do it. So what do they need to get them over the hump? Like, in your mind?
It's difficult, because the Niners are in the NFC, and I think there's a huge talent difference between the NFC and AFC. I mean, we already see in the betting odds, the top 3 teams are like AFC teams. So Niners being in the NFC, I don't think they have as much competition in the playoffs as the AFC. Like the Chiefs on the road, for example, they had to get through some really hard teams to make it to where they went.
I mean, they could not have had a more difficult path.
Yeah, for real. Like and what's scary about that, it shows that Patrick Mahomes is not only comfortable being the guy to have the first round bye, being able to play at home every game, but he's also comfortable being an underdog on the road. How dangerous is that? Like, I mean, I think like the Chiefs might even be able to go for the three-peat at this point because they've proven that they can go on the road, win. But back to the Niners, Purdy, again, it's back to the conversation before of how we need to let quarterbacks develop. Purdy's in his second year going to the Super Bowl. I mean, come on, for God's sakes, we need to give the kid some time to like develop, become a quarterback that he wants to be. I mean, we have a really good roster on the Niners, but Purdy brought them. You could say in a way he brought them to the Super Bowl, even though if you want to say he's
he did. He was the quarterback of the team.
He did. So I think there needs to be some faith in Purdy. There needs to be commitment to Purdy. Because when you looked at how he played that Super Bowl, a lot of what I saw was just nervousness. You know what I mean? Some indecisiveness on when to make a play. Should I make that throw downfield to Debo? He might get picked. Like, those are all things that will just root out in time. Yeah. You need to give it a little time. I think Purdy is the answer for the Niners. I don't think they should be going to search for anybody else. I mean, we had that report last offseason how they were looking at Tom Brady. Right. Like if they could get Tom Brady, they'd bench Purdy. I mean, and then you see Purdy's response being like, "Oh, I mean, he's the GOAT. I get it, but I did just prove that I could take my team very far in the playoffs." So I think they need to be able to commit to Purdy 100%, show him that they're committing to him, and I think he might be able to develop into a great quarterback.
Well, I think the thing with Purdy is that he just has to be able to handle the pressure. Yeah. Because I think it's interesting, right, when you get drafted last in the NFL draft, right, you think that the pressure's off you, and then all of a sudden, all this pressure was back on him, as you just said, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for him, and I think in order for the 49ers to go all the way, which they're this close, right? They're this close. It's just the darn Chiefs who seem to always figure it out one way or the other. And it's funny because before the playoffs even started, I was talking with my dad about this, and he was saying that until somebody beats the Chiefs in the playoffs, like, he's not going to bet against them. And I think that's a totally fair take.
And who has beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? The Bengals.
True.
The Bengals.
True.
I mean, like,
let's
what's going to happen? I mean, for real. So, but I obviously do want to talk about another team. It's not the Browns, surprisingly. When we're talking about Super Bowl contenders, it's the Rams. Okay. I mean, we saw how they went in the first round of the playoffs and almost beat Detroit with a weak roster, in my opinion. Like, the Rams did not have nearly as good of a roster than they did when they went to the Super Bowl in 2022. Like, it just did not happen. Yeah. And I mean, for God's sakes, like, they lost was it by 2 points? Like, a field goal? One?
Wasn't it 24-23?
I think it was, maybe something like that. So when I look at this betting odds that I have for all 32 NFL teams, the Rams are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're down the list.
Looks like they're halfway down.
Like 11. At like 11 right now. And so it's plus 3,000. I think those odds need to go a little down because I think the Rams could make a push next year for the Super Bowl. I mean, they were pretty close in the playoffs this year to beating the number 2 seed.
Detroit? Mm-hmm.
Number 3?
2 or 3. 2 or 3.
It was number 3. So, yeah.
What
about make a push?
What about the Rams? Is it Stafford?
It's Stafford. It's Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua going on those slants. And Cooper Kupp, man. Like, come on. Like, I witnessed it firsthand.
The problem with him is injuries.
Yeah, for real.
That's the issue with him. And
Cooper Kupp needs to stay healthy, but when he doesn't stay healthy, he has Puka Nacua right there. And so, I mean, Puka Nacua just had a great rookie year. I mean, phenomenal breakout year for Puka Nacua.
Yeah, he had a great year. So I think that's. What about Sean McVay?
Sean McVay, I feel like, is a great head coach for what the Rams have. I mean, I feel like is almost the key to their success in sometimes. I mean, McVay had the conversation of retiring last offseason too. After they lost the Super Bowl, he was considering retiring. Aaron Donald. They came back for this past season and they went to the playoffs, lost obviously by 1 point to the number 3 seed. So I think they have something to prove. I think they are not done. I think Sean McVay will be able to take the team that he has, which has honestly been very good under his rule. I mean, Sean McVay, again, I told you how they had a weaker roster from 2022, and he still was able to have that consistent performance from the offense and the defense. So I mean, I think you have to give them a shot. I don't think you can write them off for a sneaky contender in 2025.
I think that's an interesting take, but the thing about all these teams that we're talking about is that you have to consider what division they're in, right?
Yeah.
You have to consider what division they're in because they're going to play 6 games guaranteed within that division. So let's talk a little bit about the best division in the NFL. And a lot of people would argue that the NFC West is that division, mainly because of the 49ers, although obviously in the past, the Seahawks were very good.
Yeah.
But the 49ers, they're like such a constant. They're such a constant.
They're consistent.
Like they're always
consistent good.
Always
in the playoffs.
Always in the conversation.
Yeah, literally.
And obviously they've been in the past 2 Super Bowls.
Niners fans have been spoiled for too long.
They have been. They have been. But I think, obviously Arizona, definitely not that great. But I think there's a solid argument for that division. What other divisions?
AFC North, man.
Yep.
Come on.
Yep.
We have Browns, Steelers, Ravens, Bengals. In the 2023 season, we had the Ravens leading the division with 13-4, followed by the Browns at 11-6, Steelers being at 10-7, and the Bengals being at 9-8. And the Bengals didn't even have Joe Burrow. Like, they were still able to have a winning record and almost make it to the play. It was actually pretty funny, like watching how 3 teams from our division obviously went to the playoffs, but it was funny seeing the fight between the Steelers and the Bengals, like the battle of like the mid, like who will get to the playoffs.
But what's funny is that you said it's the battle of the mid, and yet all the teams in that division have winning records, and Cincinnati got 4th with a 9-8 record.
Yeah,
and that's like when you think about that, that's pretty insane because then you've got a division like the NFC. Which division is the Saints in? NFC.
Oh my God, we have the NFC South.
That's right.
The
NFC
Buccaneers,
South.
Saints, Panthers.
That's easily the worst division, right?
100%.
Easily the worst division. Now you did have some recent hires.
I mean, the winners of that division were the Buccaneers at 9-8, and
that's
and the
insane.
Bengals in our division were 9-8.
That's what I'm saying. So I think when you look at that, I think it's pretty safe to say that the AFC North is the best division. But I think another division that is really solid too is the AFC West with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Just because
Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos. I mean, everyone thought that division would be insane last the season that Wilson was going into the Broncos with in 2022. You had Wilson going in to the Broncos. The Raiders, they had who they have? Devontae Adams and Jimmy
Garoppolo? No.
It was Derek Carr. Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. Remember all
was
the hype
that Carr?
between them?
So that was Carr's last year before he went to New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they had all that hype between that college connection coming back. So you had AFC West being like a top division a couple years ago. Now, where do you see it now? Like going into this year?
Well, the thing for me is it's weird because the Chiefs, they're so good in the playoffs, but I think if you're thinking about the regular season, this division's definitely not up there.
Yeah.
Just based on records, and then the Chiefs just always
disappointing too.
I would say
disappointing division.
I would say disappointing.
Chargers are always seeming so promising too.
Yeah, they always start the season. They always start the season, and people are like, "Oh, the Chargers are going to be really good this year," and then they end up whatever 10-7, 9-8, whatever it is. What were they last year?
Oh my God, they were like
9-8, right?
Like they were also they're either 9-8 or 8-9.
Either way, mid.
Yeah,
mid, right? Like that's basically what we're saying here. So I think with all these exciting hires, you kind of have to start to look at the fan base too.
Yeah.
So in terms of fan bases. And I think the interesting thing about fan bases is that there's so many different things you can base a good fan base on now. So in your opinion,
wait, before you ask the question,
yeah,
what do you think is the worst fan base?
The worst. Ooh.
I think we could both
They're
say at the
so-
same time, and we have the same answer.
Okay, let me think on it for a bit.
I have it right in my head.
The worst fan base. Is it local? A local fan base?
I mean, no.
No.
The Raiders. The Raiders.
The
Come on.
Raiders?
The Raiders. They're crazy. They're
That's
insane.
your reason?
They're always just like they're about to fight with
the
anybody.
reason their fan
at any
base is
time.
bad is because they fight other fan bases.
Well, no.
I think that's a great reason to have them as the best fan base.
Oh my god.
I'm kidding. Let's keep our sanity. But I think that's funny because that was not the team. When you said that was not. I was thinking either the Chargers or the Rams because
they have no fan base.
Exactly.
We're just kidding, Rams fans, LA fans.
But they have fans. They have
they have
fans.
fans.
It's just, I don't know. It was like when I was following their moves, obviously from St. Louis and San Diego, I still am confused why I mean, St. Louis I can kind of understand, but San Diego is just weird for me.
It is weird. I mean, is it also because ownership just wanted to get out of that stadium too?
It's possible, right? Because no, now it's like
really
abandoned.
shitty, yeah.
It's abandoned now,
Yeah.
I think. So that's interesting. I didn't think about the stadium. That's pretty important.
That was one thing I know is like the biggest thing for the move, but I don't know if ticket sales reflected like wanting to move. But yeah, I mean, LA fans, we can always shit on them for being like non-existent.
Fair weather.
But like, I mean, I think the fan base is growing. The worst, hands down, is Raiders. But what do you think is the best?
The best fan base. So, it's like it depends what you. Okay, let's like. I think the best way to tackle this is to pick like 3 solid factors, and I think the biggest one for me is how well the fans travel.
Yeah.
So you have to look at if say you have a team like, I mean, the Cowboys. The thing about the Cowboys is that their fans always travel. They've got the biggest fan base.
Right.
So that's another thing to consider on top of the fact that they travel really well. And then obviously at home, they're almost unbeatable. Yeah. So I think, it's hard not to argue against the Cowboys, but that's such an easy answer because
America's team,
exactly.
Man. Like what?
America's team. Such
How about them
bunch
boys?
Of bandwagons. A bunch of bandwagons.
I mean, we also have to make an argument for the Chiefs. I mean, we have so many new fans from Taylor Swift.
From Taylor Swift, yeah.
But on all seriousness,
I mean, how can you not enjoy watching Jason Kelce take off his shirt?
For real, come on. But in all seriousness, I have to say, the team that I'm repping right now, the Browns, they travel extremely well.
Dude, you're so biased. You're so. Oh, the Dolphins. The Dolphins have. I will say that the Dolphins have a very good fan base.
They do,
but we were rudely. No, I'm kidding. Somebody out of class, but we were interrupted there. So now I lost my complete train of thought. We were talking about
best
how
fan bases.
and you said the Browns.
I said the Browns.
You're definitely not biased. I said the Dolphins. I'm kidding. But I think let's think about this really. What about you
said 3 factors that determine a good fan base.
I would
how
say
well they travel.
How well they travel. Another thing I would say is how well they stick around regardless of the team's performance, I think is another thing. And then also you have to consider what city they're in. Like I think
if it's like a very heavy like football city or if there's a lot going on.
As you said, Buffalo. What about Buffalo?
Buffalo, man, I mean
they've got the Bills and the Sabres. Like the Sabres.
True, no, Buffalo does have a good fan base. But man, what about Cleveland?
Dude,
like Cleveland,
dude.
Okay, wait. Let me tell you about.
Are you gonna move to Cleveland?
When are you
moving to Cleveland?
But I wanted to say, I mean, like, I've gone to so every Sunday that I want to watch a Browns game, I go with my dad to this Browns bar in Hollywood. Okay, and so it's this Hollywood bar, literally all Browns fans, and we had a Ravens fan come in one time. During the Browns-Ravens game. Literally a Ravens fan being an absolute, like, a-hole.
Okay.
Just being like, yeah, like, whenever, like, Lamar Jackson would run for, like, 40 yards.
Bar,
literally.
dude?
Just trying to pick a fight. And I remember all of us were there, and we were just sitting, we're just kind of like laughing, like cheering him on, like whatever, like, and like the guy, like the owner of the bar, like there were some people getting actually angry. The owner of the bar had to like settle some guys down.
Really?
Like 2 guys were just getting actually extremely angry.
Okay.
But the rest of the bar were having fun. Like they were just like, all right, yeah, whatever, have your fun. We won too, so that was the best part about it. But I just think like if it was another fan base, for example, the Raiders, they would have probably beat that guy up. And that's why I think we have the best fan base. I mean, it's always a community to be able to welcome everybody from any team to be able to watch the game.
There's so many fan bases like that, though. Like, there's so many stadiums you can go to and wear an opposing jersey and be fine.
Stadium, yes, but what about a bar?
All right, that's okay. To be fair, that's actually something to consider. That's something to consider.
Everybody's a Browns fan, but one person in our division.
I mean, I think you're an idiot if you go to an opposing team's bar when you're playing them and you have your freaking Ravens
I also
jersey
think you're
on.
an idiot, but we accept them, and we don't. And we
you
don't
said that
them.
some of the guys were getting aggressive. So
okay, there were like 2 guys getting aggressive.
I don't know about that.
And then they were kicked out. I think we should end the episode on that. End the episode on the Browns being the best fan base in the league, the Raiders being the worst.
That's not finalized. That's not finalized.
I think it might be. Anyways, thank you guys for watching episode 2 of 4th and Goal. My name is Joey.
I'm Robert Westbrook.
And thank you guys. Have a great day.